to have a platform which actually helps people discover the startup and download and basically get in a cost-effective way, nothing like it. Furlenco is a rental furniture company. We are the largest and the first ones to create this category in India. Before this, I was actually in the US for close to a decade. Moved back to India sometime in 2010. And I was dabbling with multiple ideas at that time, but incidentally, it so happened that I came back to India where I sold all my furniture in the US, got peanuts for it. And that's when I realized that furniture itself, they go down in value for sure. They depreciate. People don't value the second-hand furniture as much as you value the first-hand, like any other product itself. But in case of furniture, they actually give you nothing. So that was a big realization when I sold all my furniture in the US. Then I came to India, and this is back in 2010. Furniture buying was still a very offline experience. Online commerce had not started in India at that time. But me particularly, we were at a stage where I was not sure whether we were going to stay back in India. We thought we'll just try out India and then probably go back to the US. So we were in that state of flux. But whether you're in a state of flux or not, you do need a sofa to sit on. You need a bed to sleep on. You can't just sleep on the floor. So at that time, and for quite some time, there was no other way but to actually buy furniture. So as I was going around buying furniture, that's when I realized that why is there no concept of something like this where you can actually rent furniture when you don't have to take the decision of owning something right now, but actually delay that decision for later when you're actually absolutely sure that this is what you want to do. Until then, can you go around renting furniture? And of course, there was nothing at that time. So that was the germination of the idea. And of course, it was ridiculed. I mean, nobody thought that it could work. Who rents furniture? That's the standard question. And even now, many people still don't believe that it is possible. But it's a different thing. We are a 200 crore revenue company. We have served over 3.5 lakh customers till date. At any given point of time, we have over 1 lakh customers renting from us. So it has been a 10-year journey where we actually created this category for India and made Indians believe that renting is an option that they could go. That was the beginning of the story. Of course, yes. So this was a friend of ours who was kind of like, we came back to India, met them up, and he was moving from Mumbai to Bangalore, and asked me incidentally. And he was just chatting up and saying, what are you doing? And at that time I was working. But then I was more interested in talking about this idea to him. So I just said that this is something that I'm dabbling with on the side. So he said, oh, sure. So why don't I rent furniture for you? So he just casually threw me a thing. And I said, oh, would you do that? I mean, so he said, yeah, sure. If you can get me the stuff, I'm happy to rent furniture from it. So it was basically an angel friend who just out of his friendship said that, I would rent from you. So, but, he was being nice and kind. So you can't really count that as a customer. But the first real customer who was not a friend came at least about a year and a half down the line. And at that time, I used to pick up the phone and call all the relocation companies, tell them about this new venture. Relocation companies basically have these expats coming from abroad to India. So I thought, maybe your clients might be needing rental furniture. So as I was pitching to a whole lot of them, one of them actually called out and said that, what, if you have, I'll be ready to rent furniture. And I immediately, that day evening, rushed down. He was in Whitefield at that time. And there was no store or anything like that where I could show him the furniture. There was no furniture at all. So you had to go and convince a person to rent furniture when the furniture was not there. So went to him with a laptop. I had a PowerPoint presentation, showed him that PowerPoint presentation, and he liked it. and he handed a check that day itself. So that was the first real customer whom I could convince without any furniture, without anything. But yeah, after that, one by one, things started happening. It's a slow and steady. It's not an overnight journey at all. It's been more than 10 years. What we did very initially was start setting up these small booths in these IT park where we would just distribute pamphlets to whoever is walking by and tell them about this. And people used to wonder, oh, rental furniture, because they had never heard this before this. And we used to tell them and they said, oh, very interesting. Sure, great idea, but that's about it, right? They wouldn't jump on it. So we used to, as they used to pass by, we used to collect their name and number. Some of them would show interest, but then when you call them up, they would not be interested at all. So if you pitch the idea to about 100 to 200 people, maybe about 50 of them might, or actually less than that, would be interested and give you their phone number. And then maybe one or two would convert. That was the first time I learned the whole concept of funnel. It's not that you just talk to somebody and they will take your product, but to create that funnel, excite them with the concept, create a value for money proposition for them, and then finally them having a need for something like this and converting. Those were the days that we actually did that. So for me, it was a complete offline experience. Somewhere about after 2 to 3 years of, we didn't even have a website at that time. We had a small little store. So there was no way to acquire customers online either. So we started marketing online after we built our first website, which was like a year and a half down the line. We first had our Google ad account. We started putting money in there. We started getting some leads. So those were the initial days where it was about getting the first 5 customers and 10 customers and so on and so forth. When did we start acquiring these lakhs of customers? Well, that we had to get our funding. So we got our Series A in 2015, which is when we raised about $6 million. Of course, then we turned on the marketing engine. There was a newness about the entire brand. We started creating the brand. And then, of course, people started landing on our website one day at a time. And before that, we used to do about 10, 20 orders a month. Then it became 10, 20 orders a day. And then finally, these days we do 10, 20 orders per minute. So it was a slow and steady climb. 2015 is when we got the funding. It's now 8 years into it. It doesn't happen overnight. And no company is created overnight. It takes a long time for people to believe. The fact that people didn't believe the concept. Even my mother didn't believe. Who rents furniture is the first standard sentence that everybody would say, because it never existed before, right? People don't think about a concept because what people used to ask me, who will rent furniture? And my question back to them was, did they have an opportunity to rent? Was it even presented to them as an option? Why would they think about renting furniture if the option doesn't exist? There was only one way to access furniture, which is buy. So houses, for example, you can buy a house or you can rent a house. So people think about renting a house. But before Furlenco came in, the only way you can get furniture was buy. So why would people even think of renting furniture? You put the option in front of them, create a value proposition, and then let them decide whether they want to rent out. Right? So the biggest challenge was the mindset change. But then the moment the value proposition hit home, it started getting easier. So that was the biggest challenge. Then of course this business is a little peculiar in its way, because most businesses you would know is about, let's say you buy a product on Amazon or actually an Urban Ladder or Pepperfry. You buy it, products are shipped to your home, and that's it, right? And obviously the product should be good and all that stuff. This is a business where we were an e-commerce company shipping it to your home, and then we were also like a bank, because that asset in your house that belongs to us. So we are giving it to you like a bank giving a loan. We had to collect money from you on a monthly basis. So that was different. And then finally, when you were done, we had to pick it back and get it back to our warehouse. The picking and getting it back is not done by anybody else. So we call it the reverse logistics. And that's a science that is not being cracked at all by anybody else. In fact, reverse logistics causes huge heartburn in Flipkart and Amazons of the world, because if there are more returns, it hits your profitability. But in this business, return is it's a surety. It's 100% surety that is the nature of the business. But how do you handle that return? The sofas would be, stained. The things would have been broken. How do you handle the asset? Because you can't just because the sofa is stained, you can't just throw off the sofa. Then we wouldn't make money. So when the stuff comes back, how do you clean it? How do you refurbish it? How do you put it back into circulation as soon as possible? All of these things were challenges, which doesn't exist in other businesses. So if I were to summarize, changing the mindset was the biggest thing. But once that started happening, dealing with assets coming back and then putting back into circulation was the second biggest challenge. Every other thing was, of course, we had our funding winters. Raising money was very, very hard. I'm sure other businesses also have the same thing. But yeah, these two things were a little bit more harder for us than anybody else. We can't not be monetizing from day one. It is a revenue model. When we give you a sofa, we can't expect it to be, okay, you use it for free and then later you can start paying. So that way, it's a more core, touch and feel kind of a business. So there was no question that it had to be from day one. Profitability, of course, like any other startup, it doesn't come overnight. You need to invest for a considerable period of time before the business starts making money. Of course, we as a business, we started generating cash flow from operations for the past 2 years. But it took us, again, it takes a while because you need to invest in tech, you need to invest in people, you need to invest in brand, you need to create an X lakh audience before it starts paying out all your bills. So profitability was a later game, but revenue monetization was from day one. For a tech company, perhaps it might be different because it's all about an app install, people using that app. So that can be thought of as monetization after some time because it doesn't really cost that much for the company. Whether there are 100 users or 1,000 users, the only incremental cost will be the cloud cost that you would do. Even that will be very, very minimal. Here in our business, every new customer is an incremental cost for us, right? If Sangeeta is actually taking the sofa, we have to buy the sofa and give it to you. And then if Deepika is actually taking another sofa has to be bought and given out. So there's a cost factor with every customer out there. But for an app, it's not the same case. An incremental customer is not costing the company so much. So you could actually wait for some more time before you monetize it, because there has to be critical mass. If there are only 100 odd people coming to your app or website, you can't monetize it. You can only monetize it where people are in crores and actually coming back again and again, engaging. Then you can probably think of monetizing. And of course, the way we see assets that modern and everything is very, very different. So I would say it's a little different for us versus any of those tech companies out there. It's not easy to get people to download your app. They need to see a purpose to it. So if there is any platform which helps a budding startup to do that in a cost-effective way, then nothing like it. The biggest problem that people face, one after install, is the uninstallation of it. People are very skeptical about downloading it. Even now, even though we are an app-driven company, and it's a repeat thing, every month you have to pay your bills, all customers don't download and keep the app on their mobile because people are very finicky about which apps they want to keep for all the privacy reasons and everything. So to have a platform which actually helps people discover the startup and download and basically get in a cost-effective way, nothing like it. Otherwise, it can be very, very expensive for any startup out there. So yeah, sure. I mean, something like that should be more helpful especially for the new age startup who don't have enough money to put out there to create a brand, to make people download, etc., etc. That's the way I would put it. Unit economics. Every customer of yours should be making money bottom line. The money that you spend to acquire the customer, to whatever is the cost related to that particular customer, in our case, operational cost of the customer, all put together, at the bottom line, it has to make money. If it doesn't make money, if it's a negative number, the sum of negative numbers is always going to be negative numbers, right? You multiply it by 1,000, you multiply it by million, it's going to be, in fact, it's going to only get worse. But even if it is 1 rupee that you get bottom line, 1,000 such customers or 1 million such customers, 1 million customers, 1 rupee profit is 1 million rupee profit, right? So the most critical element is to get your unit economics right. Unit economics being positive doesn't mean that you are profitable, but unit economics being positive will ultimately lead to profitability. But what is for sure is that if unit economics is negative, there's no way you can become profitable, right? So the most critical element is to get your unit economics right. You need to be able to figure out what are the unit costs going into getting a customer, serving a customer, all of that. You should be able to put it in a spreadsheet. You need to be able to figure out that, so this is what it means to get a customer. And it's, we had to learn it. I mean, it didn't come day one. You'll have to learn about your business to figure out your unit economics. But once you crack that, that's it. Then you're on a roll. Then profitability will come eventually. Money doesn't come in overnight. Companies are not built in hours. It takes, in India especially, it takes at least 15 years to build a company. That, according to me, is a magic number. The VC models that are out there expect companies to scale up within 5 to 7 years. You can, but then you have to burn money like crazy. You won't be able to make a profit out of it. So I would say hang in there. Don't think about overnight success. Persist on whatever you're doing. Keep iterating continuously on whatever you're doing, and somewhere you will hit gold. And when you hit gold, just go for it. That's what I would say.